Fuentes, Fuller, Furutani, Gaines, Gaggiani, Garrick, Gilmore, Hagman, Hall, Harkey, Hayashi, Hernandez, Hill, Huber, Huffman, Jeffries, Jones, Knight, Liu, Logue, Lowenthal, Ma, Mendoza, Miller, Monning, Nava, Nastande, Nilo, Nilsson, Norby, V. Manuel Perez, Portantino, Ruskin, Solis, Saldana, Silva, Skinner, Smythe, Solorio, Strickland, Swanson, Torlickson, Torres, Tarico, Tran, The Lines, Yamada, Mr. Speaker.
quorum is present. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery to please stand for the prayer. We ask our Assembly Chaplain, Father Constantine Papadimos, to offer the day's prayer.
Good morning. Let us pray. Lord, the prophet David proclaimed, "Let the whole world sing for joy, for you govern the nations with justice and guide the people of the whole world." Lord, when we have joy in our heart, we can use that joy to influence people around us for good. Joy is strength, and our joy can offer strength to people you have placed in our life. Fill our hearts with your glorious joy so that we may be a blessing to others. Amen.
We ask our guests and visitors to stand and join us for the flag salute. Please join Assembly Member Bradford as he leads us in the pledge. Mr. Bradford. You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber of Sacramento, Wednesday, May 5th, 2010. Assembly met, and I am Honorable Fiona Moss.
Mr. Calderon moves and Mr. Hagman seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentations of petitions, there are none. Introduction and reference of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Motions and resolutions. The absences for the day will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Mr. Calderon, you are recognized.
Yes, Madam Speaker, members, I request unanimous consent to permit the following members to make presentations and recognitions today. Speaker John Perez and Ms. Ma and Mr. Hall to welcome the representative from the Oregon State Legislature. Speaker Perez, Ma, and Hall will recognize Xochitl Rodriguez. Speaker Perez will also present a resolution to a mystery athlete. Ms. Huber will present a member's resolution to representatives of the El Dorado Hills Oak Ridge High School girls basketball team. And Mr. Monning would like to welcome the 4th grade students from Brock Knoll Elementary. And Ms. Skinner and Buchanan will present a member's resolution to representatives of the St. Mary's College men's basketball team.
Without objection.
The following members have requested consent to adjourn in memory. That's Ms. Evans for Dorothy Brown, Mr. Jeffries for R.M. Cook Barella, and Mr. Portantino for Dr. Charles Broberg.
Without objection.
We'd like to re-refer some bills, request unanimous consent. AB 1837, Gaines, AB 2460, Amiano, both of those from appropriations to the second reading file.
Without objection.
And I believe, well, let's see. One moment. Do you want me to represent? Yes, also removals from the consent calendar. Request by Mr. Hagman to remove file item 143, AB 2645 by Mr. Chesbro. And file item 164, AB 2767 by the Assembly Judiciary Committee from the consent file.
Clerk will note.
And at the request of the author, return SB 1485, Senate GO Committee, to the Senate for further action.
Clerk will note. Okay, we're going to go to a couple of guest introductions. First off, I would like to recognize the County of Santa Cruz Treasurer and former Assembly member, Mr. Fred Keeley. Mr. Keeley. Mr. Monning?
I'm on this mic. Thank you, Madam Speaker. We have some very special guests with us today, fourth graders, teachers, and parents from Brook Knoll Elementary School in Scotts Valley. Please join me in welcoming fourth graders from Brook Knoll. Welcome.
Ms. Huber, are you ready? Not yet. Okay, members, we're going to go to business on the daily file then. Second reading, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2582, 1895, 1997, 2448 with amendments 2345, 2389, 2731, 1799, 1921, 2164, 2467, 2088, 2796, 1667 with amendments 1902, 2149, 1658, 1739, 2397, 2064 with amendments 2347 with amendments 1726, 2406, and Assembly Bill 2136 with amendments.
All bills will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Okay, members, we're going to go to Assembly third reading. File items 29 through 40, pass and retain. File item 41, AB 1759. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1759 by Assembly Member Blumenfield, an act relating to health care coverage.
Mr. Blumenfield? Mr. Blumenfield? Thank you, Mr. Blumenfield. You may open. Mr. Blumenfield.
Microphone is up. It's on now. I can open now that I have the microphone. Thank you, Madam Chair, members. Today I rise in support of a bill I authored, AB 1759. Basically what this bill does is it removes a loophole in state law that prohibits mid-year contracts from being changed when it comes to health insurance plans. This is a bill that's supported by the Valley Industry Commerce Association, the California Association of Health Underwriters, the California Medical Association, labor unions, Neighborhood Legal Services. It's got widespread support. It's basically, the concept is, if you have a contract, you should keep the contract. Very simple. One of the largest inputs for business these days is medical costs and health insurance. And businesses are struggling out there today. We're talking, and what can happen is, in the middle of their contract, unilaterally, that health insurance can be, the premiums can be raised right through the roof. We've seen Anthem. We've seen what's happened with 39% increased proposals. We know that this can happen on a very large scale. This is a protection that businesses in my district have asked for. It's good protection for consumers. And again, all it does is it prevents the arbitrary unilateral increase or decrease of a premium in the middle of a contract. With that, I ask for your support.
Thank you, members. Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. Blumenfield moves the call. Ms. Huber? Not yet. File item 42, AB 1652 on the amendments. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1652 with amendments by Assemblymember Jones.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I rise for purposes of amendments to AB 1652. The amendments merely provide a response to opponents who were concerned that the bill was too onerous with regard to its requirements vis-a-vis signage. The amendment just says that as to signage in the bill at ski resorts and snowboard resorts, a key to all signage has to be made available at the ticket counters, as is frankly the case at most resorts currently. I ask for your aye vote on the amendments.
Seeing no further questions or debate, and without objection, we'll take a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted, out to print, and back on file. File item 43, AB 1736, passed temporarily. File items 44 and 45, pass and retain. File item 46, AB 2187. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2187 by Assemblymember Rambula, an act relating to employment.
Mr. Rambula.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Assembly Bill 2187 establishes penalties for an employer that does not pay a fired or quit employee his or her wages within 90 days. And the 90-day clock starts when the wages are due. This measure is designed to improve the prosecution of wage theft. This bill specifies that the non-payment of wages must be, first of all, willful, and the employer must also have the ability to pay. So if it's not willful or the employer doesn't have the ability to pay, they are not subject to prosecution. In addition, prosecution of this crime is at the discretion of the county district attorney. For this crime, the stealing of a worker's wages, the bill imposes a misdemeanor punishable with a fine, with possible county jail time, and with restitution to the employee equal to the amount of unpaid wages. This bill improves on current law. It applies it to situations where an employer has demonstrated a willful theft of wages. In short, it gives local district attorneys the tools that they need to prosecute cases of theft of wages for the serious crime that it is. And I would respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. Rambula moves the call. File item 47, AB 2332. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2332 by Assemblymember Inc., an act relating to contractors.
We're going to pass temporarily on file item 47, pass temporarily on file item 48, file item 49, AB 2533 on the amendments. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2533 with amendments by Assemblymember Fuentes.
Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to speak today to the amendments of Assembly Bill 2533. These amendments would make the provisions in this bill consistent with its existing law's requirements for economic profiling. Rather than a one-time requirement that health insurers or plans disclose their policies and procedures related to quality rating, the amendments require annual reporting. Additionally, the amendments ensure that the bill applies to all health care providers as they exist in current law with respect to economic profiling. I respectfully ask that the amendments be adopted, the bill go out to print, and be placed back on file.
Mr. Amiano? Seeing no further questions or debate, and without objection, we will take a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted, out to print, and back on file. Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Madam Speaker, request unanimous consent to return to motions and resolutions for purposes of an introduction by Ms. Huber.
Without objection.
Thank you, members. You may recall last year we honored some underdogs on the floor, the Grant High School football team who had won the state championship. Well, I have my own underdog story to share with the members. I have here behind me the Oak Ridge High School girls basketball team, the Lady Trojans, who on March 27th of 2010 won the 2010 California Interscholastic Federation Division I state title. They were the underdogs. They were going up against a team who had won the state championships 4 times before, a team that was ranked 3rd in the nation. They were not expected to win, and this public school girls basketball team, at a time where we're cutting these kinds of programs throughout the state, managed to pull out a win, and they are the pride and joy of my district. So please welcome to the floor the seniors from the team, Megan Griswold, Kelsey Dykart, Christy Kaiser, Kristen Ramona, Lauren Adams, and Caitlin Welsh, and the rest of the 20-member girls team that are up in the gallery, along with Principal Steve Weir and Coach Steve White. Please, members, give them your round of applause for winning the state championship. And I have a resolution that I'm going to present to them to also honor them for this great honor. So thank you, members.
We'd also like to recognize today and welcome Oregon State Representative Honorable Vicki Berger and her husband Honorable John Berger. They will observe session from the rear of the chamber. And also, a staff member of the Chief Clerk's Office received a national honor. She is Xochitl Rodriguez, the Assistant File Clerk at the Assembly Desk. Ms. Rodriguez is currently in the Army Reserves with the rank of Specialist. She is only one of 2 Californians selected to participate in the National Capital re-enlistment ceremony that took place in Washington, D.C. this past Saturday, April 23rd, 2010. With her is Faustino Rodriguez, her father, Consuelo Rodriguez, her mother, Brenda Rodriguez, her sister, Faustina Rodriguez Jr., the brother, German Rodriguez, another brother, and Antonio Murillo, a friend. Welcome and congratulations. Okay, members, we're going to go back to business on our daily file. File item 50, pass and retain. File item 51, AB 2729. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2729 by Assemblymember Amiano, an act relating to vehicles.
Mr. Amiano.
Thank you very much, members. Madam Chair, if I have your attention, please, I present to you Assembly Bill 2729. Is a district bill that will provide the City and County of San Francisco with the authority to use automated enforcement to cite an illegal right-hand turn. which is prohibited even when a light is red at a single specific intersection in the city. This dangerous intersection, the Market Street, Octavia Boulevard, Central Freeway on-ramp, is a unique expressway-like intersection that replaced a portion of the Central Freeway that was torn down in 2005. According to the San Francisco Metropolitan Transportation Agency, there is no intersection more dangerous for bicyclists, with a rate of collisions between bicycles and cars that is 4 times higher than the next most dangerous intersection. There were at least 13 collisions in the first 2 years of its existence and a string of near-fatal collisions over the successing years. The measure was amended in Transportation Committee to narrowing the bill to a pilot that will sunset in 3 years and was passed out with bipartisan support. The bill is sponsored by the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition and supported by the City and County of San Francisco and a number of other organizations. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. Amiano moves a call. File items 52 through 58. File items 52 through 55, pass and retain. File item 56, pass and retain. Pass temporarily. File item 57 and 58, pass and retain. File item 59, AB 2418. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2418 by Assemblymember Cook, an act relating to Indian children.
Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, AB 2418 would revise the definition of Indian child for the purposes of Native American child custody proceedings to include an unmarried person who is over 18 years of age but under 21 years of age and who is either a member of an Indian tribe or eligible for membership in an Indian tribe. Currently, the Indian Child Welfare Act applies to Native American children under the age of 18 for child custody proceedings. While this is adequate in most cases, when a youth remains in dependency court past the age of 18, the Indian Child Welfare Act no longer applies. This bill would ensure that our laws pertaining to Native American youth over the age of 18, still in the jurisdiction of the dependency court, are consistent with the purpose of the Indian Child Welfare Act, which is to protect and respect the Native American heritage of the child and to provide tribes with a voice in these proceedings. Please note the bill provides the option for any Native American youth over 18 to opt out of the Indian Child Welfare Act application if he or she chooses. This bill has no negligible cost and has enjoyed bipartisan support. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 58, noes 0. Measure passes. File item 60, pass and retain. File item 61, AB 2103. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2103, an act relating to the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority.
Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 2103 authorizes the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority to propose a regional funding measure in a regional election instead of separate elections in 9 individual counties. Legislation passed in 2008 established the authority as a body to raise and allocate resources for the restoration and protection of wetlands and wildlife habitat along the San Francisco Bay. As part of their mission, this entity has to formulate a strategy for raising local revenues to restore 36,000 acres of publicly owned shoreline into tidal wetlands. One way of raising the needed revenue is to carry out a voter-approved funding mechanism. However, current law is ambiguous as to how the authority, a regional entity, could carry out such an election. AB 2103 simply authorizes the authority to place a region-wide funding mechanism to be decided by tabulating the votes of the whole region, the 9 counties collectively. This bill got unanimous support in local government and has no known opposition. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 62, no 0. Measure passes. File item 62, AB 2182. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2182 by Assemblymember Huffman, an act relating to contractual assessments.
Mr. Huffman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. 3 years ago, the legislature created a voluntary contractual assessment program known as AB 811. Expanded last year through a great bill by Assemblymember Blumenfield, so that we now have voluntary contractual assessments through local government for energy efficiency improvements and water use efficiency improvements. It's a program that's working very well, and this bill will extend that very effective program to voluntary improvements in sewer laterals and septic systems. It recognizes the broad public benefit we get when private homeowners make these improvements and help us improve water quality, protect groundwater quality, and prevent sewage spills. It has no cost to the state, no opposition, and has enjoyed broad bipartisan support. So I request your aye vote.
Mr. Logue.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I also stand in support of this. This is not only good for the environment and for our water quality, but it actually gives us a great resale value on our property. It ensures that our property values will continue to maintain its value because of these improvements. So in the long run, this is a win-win. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 54, noes 4. Measure passes. File item 63, pass and retain. File item 64, AB 2672. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2672 by Assemblymember Cook, an act relating to local government.
Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In January, the Federal Highway Administration suspended 4 members of a city council in Riverside County from participating in federally funded transportation projects and programs due to criminal indictments of those council members. One of the members of the city council was a sitting member on the Riverside County Transportation Commission, the RCTC, which is charged with coordinating highway and transit planning and identify projects for state and federal funding. With the suspension of the city council member, RCTC became ineligible to receive any federal funding, which jeopardized millions of dollars anticipated for local projects. Luckily, the city council member stepped down from RCTC voluntarily. However, if he or any member of the County Transportation Commission or a special act agency was suspended by the federal government but refused to step down, that suspended member could remain on the County Transportation Commission or special act agency. And thus, the dilemma that I'm talking about, it would be the denial of badly needed federal funding. Currently, there is no remedy in state law to the situation that I have described. Federal dollars for local projects, particularly transportation projects, are of utmost importance to the economic health and quality of life in a region. The loss of federal funding for something such as a transportation project would have a devastating impact and effect on the short-term and long-term economic progress of a particular region. This bill corrects the problem by providing that an appointed individual must vacate his or her appointed office when the individual has been debarred, suspended, disqualified, or otherwise excluded from participating in federal transactions as prescribed under federal law. This bill does not speak to the indictments or the allegations of criminal activity. We cannot control whether the federal government will debar any individual from participation. This bill simply ensures when the federal government takes action in this manner, we won't jeopardize funding for local communities. I ask for your aye vote on this measure. Thank you.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 68, no 0. Measure passes. File item 65 passed temporarily. File item 66, AB 2615. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2615 by Assemblymember Chesbro, an act related to ocean resources.
Mr. Chesbro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. AB 2615 advises the Ocean Protection Council of the legislature's intent regarding funding priorities focusing on sustainable fishing practices, focusing on the protection of both fish stocks and fishing communities. AB 2615 also requires coordination and consultation between the OPC, Fish and Game Commission, and the Department of Fish and Game with commercial and recreational fisheries. The legislation will firmly establish California's commitment to the protection of its marine environment, its fish stocks, the people who work in our fishing fleet and their communities. This bill is sponsored by the Pacific Coast Federation of Fishermen's Associations. It has no known opposition. I would urge your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 26. Measure passes. File item 67, AB 2616. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2616 by Assemblymember Hill, an act relating to elections.
Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 2616 is a bill vital to ensuring that every vote counts. Sponsored by the Secretary of State, this bill requires the Secretary of State, in coordination with local election officials, to establish procedures to allow a vote-by-mail voter to confirm whether their vote was counted. Vote-by-mail ballots can be disqualified for various reasons, such as a voter's signature that has changed due to age or disability. The Contra Costa County Clerk reports that in his county, between 1 and 2% of vote-by-mail ballots are typically disqualified in each election. Unfortunately, these voters have no way of knowing if their ballots are being counted and have no way of rectifying the problem. AB 2616 seeks to give vote-by-mail voters the same right currently afforded to provisional voters and give these voters the opportunity to ensure that their vote is counted. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 68, noes 0. Measure passes. File item 68, AB 2706. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2706 by Assemblymember Bonnie Lowenthal, an act relating to civil rights.
Ms. Lowenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. California has one of the largest homeless populations in the country. We have roughly 157,000 homeless people living here. And tragically, we also have the second highest rate of hate-based violence against homeless people. Homeless people make easy prey. Not only are they out in the open, but they often suffer from physical and mental disabilities. Those who attack the homeless view them as easy targets, as second-class citizens, undeserving of respect and undeserving of mercy. This past year, homeless people have been set on fire, stabbed, shot, and beaten with baseball bats. Their assailants seem convinced that they are less likely to get caught or suffer serious legal consequences because their victims are so powerless and vulnerable. AB 2706 seeks to change that balance of power. My hope is that it shatters that sense of safety from consequences that these bullies seem to enjoy. AB 2706 declares that a homeless person has the right to be free from violence or intimidation. More importantly, it gives them a right to sue their attackers for enhanced civil penalties. AB 2706 raises the stakes. It says to these criminals that there will be a high price for their actions, and it does so without adding additional strain to our law enforcement or our correction system. I ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Salas.
Yes, Madam Speaker and members, I stand in strong support of this bill. On any given night on the streets of California, over 25% of the homeless people that are on the streets are veterans. And they're veterans that are men and women. And for circumstances that they can't control, they have found themselves in this position. And the idea of who is homeless, oftentimes we think that they're worthless, shiftless, and it's their fault that they're there. So I really think that we have to support this bill. We have to change the idea and the stereotype of those that are homeless on our streets. More and more people are falling into homelessness, and certainly the veteran population that has fought for our freedoms, they too are deserving of our protection when they need us. Thank you.
Mr. Adams.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Members, I must respectfully rise in opposition to this measure, and I want to just offer a word of caution about the expansion of civil rights to life status. Fundamentally, what we're being asked to do here is to treat homelessness as we would some other protected class that deserves hate protection, hate law protections. And I would suggest to you that as a life choice, notwithstanding the fact that so many of the homeless are actually on the streets because of mental illnesses and other conditions beyond their control, this is not the same thing as trying to protect a class because of their sexual orientation, or protect a class because of their gender, or protect a class because of their faith. Members, I think that this is a very dangerous road to go down. Once we start sanctifying the notion that we should protect classes of people because of the lifestyle choices that they've engaged in, I think we run the dangerous risk of turning everything into a hate crime. I understand the author's intent. I think it's reprehensible that anyone should commit a crime against anyone, and particularly pathetic that somebody would try to reach out and harm somebody in our homeless communities. But members, I think this is the wrong way to approach this problem, and I would respectfully urge a no vote.
Mr. Anderson.
I also rise in opposition. As you may know, I've opposed all hate crime legislation. I think that the real problem with it is all life is precious in the eyes of God, and everybody is valuable. So with that, I will be voting no, and I urge a no vote.
Ms. Lowenthal, would you like to close?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the support of my colleague, Assemblymember Salas, as she discussed. I think there are a lot of veterans on the street. This is a protective measure. I also want to point out there are a lot of homeless women on the street, and much of the violence is directed toward women. There are other municipalities and states that have taken on this hate crime status. I will mention them: Alaska, Maine, Cleveland, Seattle, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
See no further questions or debate. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 20. Measure passes. File item 69, pass and retain. File item 70, AB 2789. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2789 by the Assembly Committee on Banking and Finance, an act relating to money transmission.
Mr. Eng.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 2789 will create regulatory efficiency and increase consumer protection for non-bank money services. Under current law, in order to offer money transmission services, issue money orders, and sell traveler's checks, California requires 3 licenses, although typically these services are offered by the same licensee at the same location. California is one of the very last states to use this outdated model. The bill currently under consideration creates a unitary law, the Money Transmission Act, to regulate these services under one licensing law. Additionally, this bill will close any loopholes in emerging technology by requiring that licensees have adequate net worth and reserve requirements when offering stored value cards. This bill will provide cost savings to DFI through streamlined licensing and regulations. The bill has bipartisan support, no known opposition, and is a committee bill. Respectfully request an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 56, noes 3. Measure passes. File item 71, pass and retain. File item 72, pass and retain. Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I request unanimous consent to return to motions and resolution for purposes of introduction by Ms. Skinner and Ms. Buchanan.
Without objection. Ms. Skinner.
Thank you, members and Madam Chair. I have with me today and also Assemblymember Torlakson and Assemblymember Buchanan welcome the St. Mary's College men's basketball team. And we are honoring them today because of their singular achievement of advancing to the third round of the Sweet 16 of the 2010 NCAA basketball tournament. St. Mary's College is in the city of Moraga in Contra Costa County in my district. However, the accomplishments of the team, of St. Mary's basketball team, and its members and coaches are worthy of recognition by the entire state, primarily because they were the only California college basketball team to reach the Sweet 16. The St. Mary's men have gone to the NCAA tournament 6 times in the school's history, but you should know that it has been 51 years since they advanced past the first round. Truly a major accomplishment for a relatively small college with a total enrollment of about 3,800. I won't read the entire resolution, but I know all of you appreciate all of the accomplishments of the St. Mary's men's basketball team and that you will join me and my colleagues in commending them for their great year. With the Speaker's consent, I'd like to turn this over to Assembly Members Buchanan and Torlakson for a few remarks.
Congratulations to this fantastic set of athletes and scholars.
Thank you. You know, the best basketball of the year, as far as I'm concerned, is March Madness. And it's not often that small colleges can compete with the big colleges and all their money, but basketball is one sport where they can. And I've been watching St. Mary's for years because I live about 10 minutes away, and I knew this day was coming. So I want to just congratulate you because you've made all of us, not only in the La Miranda area, but the greater area, extremely proud to have you as part of our community, and we're very proud of your accomplishments. So congratulations.
Members, we're going to go back to business on the daily file. File item 73, AB 1914, passed temporarily. File item 74, AB 1996. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1996 by Assemblymember Hill, an act relating to chiropractors and making appropriation, therefore.
Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. The Board of Chiropractic Examiners regulates the chiropractic profession in the state. Due to necessary enhancements made in the board's enforcement program and the increase in costs of doing business,
Members, can we have a little attention?
the board's current revenue is inadequate to pay for the level of service needed to protect consumers. The fund will become insolvent next year if the fee remains at the current level, and the board will be forced to make cuts to enforcement. This bill raises the fee from $150 to $250 beginning in January 2011, and the fees have not been raised since 1991. This bill is sponsored by the Board of Chiropractic Examiners, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Norby.
I support the bill, Madam Speaker. It is a significant jump, and generally I oppose increases in fees and taxes. But fees are for services. The chiropractors are getting the service of having an industry which is well regulated. The fee has not been raised in 20 years, and if you factor just the inflationary growth, I think it's justified.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 54, noes 5. Measure passes. File item 75, AB 2007. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2007 by Assemblymember Adams, an act relating to the Political Reform Act of 1974.
Mr. Adams.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. My colleagues, my friends in the reporting world, many of you may recall a recent incident where the FPPC engaged in some gotcha politics, the function of which was allegedly to make sure that we were transparent with our gifts and our contributions for the benefit of the public at large, an idea that I wholly support. But the idea of penalizing you before you have an opportunity to remedy a perceived violation is fundamentally unfair. This bill seeks to do nothing more than to require the Fair Political Practices Commission to post on a website the information that they're going to be using to determine whether or not you received a gift. This gives you an opportunity to cross-check your own data, your own information, to ensure that in fact you did receive that gift, or to have time to challenge something if you don't believe that you did receive the gift and it was erroneously reported. Members, I think this is an incredibly straightforward measure that seeks to create transparency, to honor the spirit of the Fair Political Practice Commission's rules and regulations, and the Fair Political Practices desire to create the transparency that we so often desire as well. Members, I think this measure is worthy of your support, and I would strongly encourage an aye vote.
Mr. Calderon, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker and members, I support this measure. There are many members on this floor that were fined by the FPPC for violations they knew absolutely nothing about because they did not get the information from the organization reporting that some type of food or drink was served. Probably most members, I think it's fair to say we attend something like 50 to 100 events in a month. And we depend on the sponsoring organizations to inform us as to whether or not they're reporting any kind of gift. At all those events, there's usually some food served. And even if you don't eat any food or drink any drink, if you get reported or don't get reported, if you just attended, that's a potential violation. I think it makes perfect sense for the FPPC on a quarterly basis to advise those covered individuals under the Act to, in terms of what reports are being filed. I mean, after all, the purpose of the FPPC is not to run a gotcha situation. The purpose of the FPPC is to help members and other electeds covered to understand the law so they don't violate the law. So I think this is a perfect educational tool that can be used, and I ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Norby.
Mr. Speaker, I spend 3 nights up here, like we all do, away from. I go to a lot of events to meet people, to familiarize myself with the personalities and the issues. Some you can eat, some you can't eat, some you tell them you're not going to eat, and they check you anyway. Some, even if you don't eat, if you're listening to the music and they paid for the band, well, it's still a gift. And so if we're going to be subjected to this kind of arbitrariness, at least we ought to be able to see what they're doing on the internet so we can anticipate it. I support the bill.
Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, too, support this bill, and I just want to give an example of something that happened to me during this last go-round. Because my name has the same 3 first letters as someone else's name, I got listed as having failed to report things. So the system is obviously flawed, and having the ability for us to look at this first and remedy the problem, I think, is only fair. So I ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Logue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to say to everybody in this room right now, now you know how the businesses feel in California by the way the regulatory authorities treat them. Thank you.
Mr. Blakesley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I too rise in support of this legislation. I wish my bill to prevent all such gifts from even being given had received a similar enthusiastic response from legislators, but I'm glad to see them stand up to crack down on the FPPC. I urge an aye vote.
Mr. Adams, would you like to close?
I'm very grateful for the support and urge an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote desire to vote. All those vote desire to vote. All those vote desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 68, noes no. Measure passes. File item 76 pass and retain. Move to file item 78 AB 2. File item 43 AB 1736 by Ms. Ma. Clerk will read. Pardon me. File item 78 AB 2080 by Mr. Hernandez. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2080 by Assemblymember Hernandez, an act relating to Joint Powers Authority.
Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez, you do not look like Ms. Ma. My apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill, AB 2080, is a common sense measure that authorizes local entities to securitize a 35% interest payment guarantee issued by the federal government when a local entity opts to issue Build America bonds. Build America bonds are a new financing tool for state and local governments. The bonds, which allow new direct federal payment subsidy, are taxable bonds issued by state and local governments that will be given them access to conventional corporate debt markets. The American Recovery and Investment Act allows the state and local governments to issue such bonds in the years 2009 and the year 2010. The issuing entity has the ability to either receive a direct payment on which the United States Treasury Department pays state or local government issuers a subsidy equal to 35% of the interest payments in such bonds, which is intended to lower the issuer's cost of funds, or receive a tax credit in which the bondholders receives a tax credit to equal to 35%. I will note that this bill provides another option. Local governments will not be required to securitize these payments, but they will have the opportunity to consider whether this option may work for their situation, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 44, noes 20. Measure is adopted. Move to file item 43, AB 1736 by Ms. Ma. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1736 by Assemblymember Ma, an act relating to structural fumigation.
Ms. Ma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, AB 1736 extends the sunset date of the Structural Fumigation Enforcement Program from January 1st, 2011 to January 1st, 2014. This bill is sponsored by the Pest Control Operators of California and the California Agriculture Commissioners and Sealers Association. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 59, no 0. Measure is adopted. Move to file item 48, AB 2700 by Ms. Ma. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2700 by Assemblymember Ma, an act relating to domestic partner registration.
Ms. Ma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 2700, the Separation Equity Act, will permit couples who are both married and registered as domestic partners to dissolve both relationships in a single court proceeding. Under current law, couples that want to terminate a marriage or dissolve a domestic partnership must file a form and pay a $355 fee with the courts. However, in an instance where a couple has both a domestic partnership and a marriage, the couple must file two separate forms and pay two filing fees, totaling $710 in order to dissolve both relationship statuses. This dual termination process is not only unnecessarily burdensome and costly to the parties, but cumbersome for the courts. There is no rational reason to make some couples jump over additional hurdles to dissolve their union. It's hard to get married in California, but it may be harder to get divorced. AB 2700 will simply require the Judicial Council to create a new standard dissolution form in order to save time and money for the couples and for the courts. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no debate or discussion, clerk open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 21. Measure is adopted. Move to file item 65, AB 2600. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2600 by Assemblymember Ma, an act relating to medicine.
Ms. Ma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 2600 would require the Medical Board of California to consider including a continuing education course in the diagnosis and treatment of hepatitis. In January, the California Department of Public Health released its California Adult Viral Hepatitis Prevention Strategic Plan for 2010 to 2014. This plan highlights the costly and significant public health problems of hepatitis B and C in California and the need for increased awareness of and education regarding hepatitis to healthcare providers. As many of you know, chronic hepatitis B affects nearly 280,000 Californians, and chronic hepatitis C affects 450,000 Californians. They are the leading cause for liver cancer and liver transplant in California. Communities of color are disproportionately affected, especially Asian Pacific Islander, African Americans, and Latinos. Although prevention is possible and treatments are available, many persons at risk or infected with viral hepatitis are neither tested nor treated due to the lack of knowledge and awareness about these diseases among healthcare providers. This insufficient understanding about chronic viral hepatitis can contribute to continued transmission, missed opportunities for early diagnosis and medical care, and poor health outcomes in affected people. If we are to reduce hepatitis B in California, we need to start by educating our physicians. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Garrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this bill. I have had the opportunity to become more familiar with the devastating effects of hepatitis on our communities and throughout the state of California. And this bill also addresses the fact, although as a Republican, we rarely want to mandate additional items on boards. In this case, I believe there is an exception, and it does allow the medical education requirements to consider including a course in the diagnosis of hepatitis in their making up their rules, and I encourage and I vote on this bill. Thank you.
Seeing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 53, noes 12. Measure is adopted. Move to file item 93, AB 2240. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2240 by Assemblymember Ma, an act relating to agriculture.
Ms. Ma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, AB 2240 will create a modest fee increase to ensure the continuation of the California Department of Food and Agriculture's Market Enforcement Branch. CDFA's Market Enforcement Branch assists farmers with resolving disputes with produce dealers and food processors and assures farmers are fully paid for their products sold to processors and dealers. The branch has been successful at obtaining numerous payments to farmers for products delivered to produce dealers and processors. This bill ensures they are able to continue doing so. In 2009, the branch investigated complaints for lack of payment totaling nearly $12 million. Having the branch keep complaints out of the California's court system so we are saving the courts the cost of dealing with additional lawsuits is important. Investigating complaints and obtaining payments denied to California's farmers is at the heart of the branch's mission. AB 2240 has received bipartisan support and is sponsored by the California Farm Bureau Federation. The bill is also supported by the California Association on Wine Grape Growers, and it's important to recognize that the Wine Institute is neutral and they believe the fee increase is fair. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 52, noes 9. Measure is adopted. Move to file item 79, AB 2274 by Mr. Bell. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2274 by Assemblymember Bell, an act relating to in-home supportive services.
Mr. Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. One of the most fundamental principles in the in-home support services programs is that recipients have a right to select their own service providers. Currently, this right applies in counties that use an individual provider model and in counties that use a contract or managed care agencies as a means of administering the IHSS services. This bill, AB 2274, will extend the right of provider choice to recipients who receive services from an entity funded by the state's Section 1115 Medi-Cal waiver. While no such entities exist under the current 1115 waiver, the waiver expires on July 31st. The state's now developing its new 1115 waiver application, and it's likely that the IHSS will be included among the services offered through this new waiver. This bill will simply ensure that should that happen, consumer rights of choice of provider will apply at the time any new such program model is implemented. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debaters. Mr. Berryhill, for what purpose do you rise, sir?
In opposition of this bill, Mr. Speaker.
You may continue.
Thank you. Yes, members, I rise in opposition to this bill. This bill is really unnecessary. It's very expensive, and it's just bad policy in a state that is nearly broke. I urge a no vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 44, noes 20. Measure is adopted. Move to file on 80 AB 2279 by Ms. Noreen Evans. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2279 by Assemblymember Evans, an act relating to state property and making appropriation therefore.
Ms. Evans.
Mr. Speaker and members, this bill authorizes the Director of General Services to sell to Napa County at no less than fair market value 850 acres of state-owned property. It is on a portion of Napa State Hospital, and it's been designated as surplus by the Department of Mental Health. On the other side, or as part of this property actually, is Skyline Park, and it's been used as a park for the last 31 years. The state has leased the property to Napa County since 1979 for $100 a year. It has been operated continuously since then as a public park and a nature area. It includes more than 12 miles of hiking, riding, and bicycle trails, a native plant garden, a horse arena, and an archery range for 31 years. And again, this would be at fair market value. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 20. Measure is adopted. Would move to file item 81, AB 2283 by Mr. Miller. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2283 by Assemblymember Miller, an act relating to alkaline hydrolysis.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My bill, AB 2283, seeks to add biocremation to one of the alternatives that Californians can use in considering their end-of-life options. The process known as alkaline hydrolysis is a new technology that's water-based that seeks to use water to decompose the body and speed up the process. The bill has received unanimous support through all the committees it's been through, and I respectfully urge an aye vote. And remember, going green is not just a way of life.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 66, no 0. Measure is adopted. Move to file item 82, AB 2328 by passed temporarily. Move to file item 83, AB 2351 by Mr. Chesbro. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2351 by Assemblymember Chesbro, an act related to forest resources.
Mr. Chesbro.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, AB 2351 would authorize CAL FIRE to collect recreational user fees for overnight camping and reserve group activities on any state demonstration forest. The bill would allow the department to charge a fee in the amount that would reimburse the department's costs related to maintaining and improving, among other things, campground facilities. Since camping on the demonstration forest has traditionally been free of charge, law enforcement, campground access, and maintenance and improvements to the campgrounds and the surrounding natural environment has been borne by the demonstration state forests and funded by revenue sources such as timber sales. I think we know the economy has been down, timber sales are down, and this has made it very difficult for CAL FIRE to operate these campgrounds. The bill is sponsored by the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, now known as CAL FIRE, and is supported by many organizations and has continued to receive bipartisan support. I'd urge your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 47, noes 14. The measure passes. We'd like to recognize Mr. Manny Perez for some introductions today. Mr. Perez.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I just want to present to you our 7th and 8th grade students from St. Teresa Catholic School from Palm Springs. They're in the gallery. If we can give them a round of applause for being here with all of us. Hello, everyone. Thank you, members.
File item 84, AB 2357. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2357 by Assemblymember Saldana, an act relating to the Political Reform Act of 1974.
Ms. Saldana.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, this is an effort to make the Fair Political Practice Commission once again consistent in how they regulate financing for campaigns. What this will do is require that money spent on polling for a ballot measure be reported as part of campaign expenditures. Currently, if you do the polling after the measure is qualified, you must report that. But if you do it before it qualifies, you don't have to report it. So in either case, it will be a matter of judging the support for the bill. It is part of a campaign effort. I've gotten bipartisan support for this through the Elections Committee and the Appropriations Committee, and it is a good government bill. It will really bring consistency to this. Right now, there are chances for people to be confused and report something in one case it's not required or not reported in another case when it is required. So I ask for your aye vote on this.
Mr. Adams.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Members, I rise in support of this measure. I was able to vote for it when I first heard it in our Elections Committee. Here's the thing. A principal objection raised to the bill is that there is no so-called evidence of the problem. Well, that's not a particularly compelling argument in light of the fact that how can you garner evidence if there is no rule governing what should or shouldn't take place? Members, we know as politicos, as people who engage in the practice every day, that this kind of stuff happens all the time. All we're saying is that the bill is going to require people to be completely candid about who's paying for what in a campaign. I know the measure does put additional onus on the people who are conducting the surveys, but I think it's important that Californians make informed decisions about who it is that's supporting or opposing measures as we go forward in an ever-increasing initiative environment. Members, I strongly recommend an aye vote on this measure.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will...
Thank you. If I could close. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Ms. Saldana.
And I appreciate the comments from my colleague. Increasingly, we're hearing from voters who are receiving information, being contacted without any identifying information of who is making those contacts, who is sending out the information. This is about transparency. It's about opening up a process so people can trust the people they're getting information from. And I really do think it benefits us all when we find increasingly our hands as legislators are increasingly tied by the dictates of the voters based on ballot measures. It's more important than ever that the voters understand who is behind putting these ballot measures before them. Once again, I ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 57, noes 4. Measure passes. File item 85, AB 2358. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2358 by Assemblymember De Leon and Act relating to ammunition.
Mr. De Leon.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, as well as members. AB 2530 is a consumer protection measure. This bill clarifies that ammunition records cannot be provided to a non-authorized person or a third party, and that the records no longer required by law shall be destroyed in a manner that protects the privacy of the consumer. Customers should be able to leave their information without the fear that their information will be sold or accessed by a third party. This is a measure that is supported by the Legal Community Against Violence, as well as the California chapters of the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, as well as PORAC. PORAC is a big supporter. Madam Speaker and members, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. De Leon moves the call. File item 86, AB 2419. On the amendments, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2419 with amendments by Assemblymember Cook.
Mr. Cook.
Madam Speaker, AB 2419 will make several minor technical changes to the Contractor State License Board law. Will make changes regarding the name of the board, would rename specified classifications of contractors, make other technical, non-substantive, and conforming changes to related provisions. The amendments before you are corrective amendments, which clear up a few drafting issues. Bipartisan support, I ask for your aye vote on the amendments.
Seeing no further questions or debate on the amendments, and without objection, we will take a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Out to print and back on file. File items 87 and 88 pass and retain. File item 89, AB 1755. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1755 by Assemblymember Swanson, an act relating to contractual assessments.
Mr. Swanson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This bill, AB 1755, will not cost the state any money. The bill simply adds seismic upgrade to the list of contractual assessments, which currently include water efficiency improvements and renewable energy generating devices. Seismic safety is a serious ongoing concern for the people of the state of California. We need to ensure that buildings and homes are properly prepared for the next large earthquake. The costs typically associated with seismic retrofitting a house in order to ensure safety can be extremely high for many homeowners. The cost of retrofitting a home serves as a primary barrier to making the needed repairs. AB 1755 will make seismic retrofit easier to achieve and more affordable by making it easy for homeowners to protect their homes in the event of an earthquake. This bill will increase public safety in the event of an earthquake and will reduce the number of homes that are destroyed in the next big quake. Also, by financially assisting homeowners with seismic upgrades, we will provide the construction industry with necessary jobs to help our struggling economy at the time we make homeowners in California much more safe. So I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 49, noes 14. Measure passes. File item 90, AB 1770. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1770 by Assemblymember Galgiani, an act relating to vital records.
Ms. Galgiani.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Assembly Bill 1770 is sponsored by the Stanislaus County Board of Supervisors and would generate a much-needed funding stream for the Stanislaus Family Justice Center, a one-stop center to help victims of family violence and abuse. AB 1770 will allow the Stanislaus County Board of Supervisors to raise the vital records fees by $2 and allocate all revenue generated by these funds to the Family Justice Center. Stanislaus County experiences a 25% greater rate of domestic violence calls than the state average and a 50% higher rate for child welfare referrals. 15 partners have joined with the county to create this center, and the county has garnered $650,000 in private funds during these difficult economic times when they're at the center of the foreclosure crisis. $650,000 demonstrates the will of this county to have this legislation. This specific authority is already authorized for other counties, and Stanislaus County is seeking similar authority. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 43, noes 21. Measure passes. File item 91, pass and retain. File item 92, AB 2147. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2147 by Assemblymember Emmanuel Perez, an act relating to transportation.
Mr. Perez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 2147 will ensure equitable access to safe routes to school funds. Doing this will improve the safety and health of California's children. AB 2147 does two important things. First, it allows Caltrans to consider proposals benefit to a disadvantaged community when ranking applications. And secondly, AB 2147 increases community involvement in the development of safe routes to schools proposals by prioritizing applications with a strong community engagement process. This bill is important for a number of reasons. Number one, disadvantaged communities lack basic infrastructure, such as sidewalks that keep kids safe, which has resulted in thousands of child pedestrians being hit each year. Number two, children from disadvantaged communities are twice as likely to be overweight than children from high-income families. And lastly, the current process does not proactively involve parents, teachers, counselors, and others who know the needs of the community firsthand. AB 2147 has received bipartisan support in policy and fiscal committees. This bill is about protecting children's health and safety. AB 2147 ensures all communities have the ability to benefit from the Safe Routes to School program. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 52, noes 13. The measure passes. File item 93 has been dispensed with. File item 94, ACR 67. Clerk will read.
Assembly concurrent resolution 67 by Assemblymember Davis relative to Public Service Recognition Month.
Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Madam Speakers and members. In concert with the American Society of Public Administration, I'm presenting ACR 67, which declares May 2nd through the 8th Public Service Recognition Week. This resolution encourages all Californians to recognize the critical role of civil servants in our state. Approximately 230,000 employees who are state of California employees, 2,100 of which are legislative employees, including both the state Senate and state Assembly. The contributions made by civil servants in this state have strengthened our belief that public service is a noble profession. The professionalism and expertise demonstrated by public employees in this state in carrying out a wide variety of services have helped build a stronger foundation for our government. Civil servants have served the people of California well, even in these difficult budget times. This resolution pays tribute to all civil services in the servants in the state of California for dedicating themselves to improving the quality of life for all of the people of California. I would like to, Madam Speaker, request co-authors and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Davis is asking for the first roll to be open for co-authors. The clerk will open the roll. This is for co-authors, members. This is for co-authors. Clerk will note there are 54 co-authors. We can take a voice vote on this item. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The measure is adopted. Mr. Davis, for what purpose do you rise?
I have AB 1914, but I didn't know.
We will come back to that. File item 95, AB 2078. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2078 by Assemblymember Charles Calderon, an act relating to taxation.
Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Madam Speaker and members, this is a very, very simple bill that could produce good results for California. As you know, approximately $1 billion in state and local revenue is lost each year from unreported taxes, primarily made from purchases from out-of-state retailers on the internet or catalog. So this bill simply requires that those out-of-state retailers or that have catalogs or do business on the internet simply note on their website or on their catalogs that the purchases being made may be subject to use tax in the state where they live. And that's all the bill does. Ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. Calderon moves the call. File item 96, pass and retain. File item 97, AB 2487. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2487 by Assemblymember Fuhr, an act relating to judges.
Mr. Fuhr.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So under existing rules, if a judge has before him or her a case in which they have a financial interest of more than $1,500, they're required to recuse themselves. The rules, however, don't define financial interest to include the receipt of a campaign contribution. This law would simply say that if a judge receives a donation for their campaign in excess of $1,500, either from a party or from the party's attorney, that the judge would be required to recuse him or herself. If the donation is less than $1,500, the judge has to announce that on the record so the parties can proceed as they see fit regarding disqualification. The importance of this law is very basic. Every decision a court issues needs to be accurately perceived as fully impartial. And the law is consistent with recommendations recently made by a commission on which members of the Supreme Court have served to, again, try to underscore for the public the importance of impartiality in the justice system. The bill has a bipartisan unanimous support, 10-0 in judiciary. I urge an aye vote.
Mr. Calderon.
Yeah. Should this also apply to legislators before they vote? I mean, I'm wondering how that's going to this is going to impact the administration of justice. I think that judges do have to report their campaign contributions. That is public information. But if they disqualify themselves, we could have very few judges. As it is, we have very few courts that are remaining open. We could have very few judges that could be hearing cases. And there are people already having difficulty finding a court that's open. I think this is well-intentioned, but I'm not sure that this is going to produce a good result in terms of having courts available. I would request a no vote.
Mr. Huffman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I can't help but jump in here. There's a big difference between legislators and judges. As much as we may wish that legislators were impartial, we're not. And there's nothing that requires us to be impartial. Yes, gambling in Casablanca. Judges are a different thing. We want absolute impartiality and objectivity from our judges, and so it's, of course, very sensible that we'd hold them to a higher standard and certainly get this information out for recusal purposes, and I want to proudly support this bill.
Mr. DeVore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I'm listening to the debate here, and I just wanted to rise in support of this measure. I'm intrigued by the comments that have been previously made, but I believe it's abundantly obvious that when you have a judge making decisions, often in the privacy of his or her own office, that is a singular decision by one individual. That is very different than a body of 80 or a body of 40 making decisions in public for all to see. And for that reason, I think that this bill is very well considered, and I would strongly urge support for this measure.
Mr. Logue.
Question of the author, please. What happens if you have 4 Superior Court judges in your county and you've given money to all 4 of them? What happens then?
Then there's a change of venue required. But let me say, Mr. Logue, it actually goes, if I might, to Mr. Calderon's point as well. Relatively few Superior Court judges in the state of California actually stand for election and therefore in the position of soliciting donations. But there are those who do. And in the case of those who do, this is an important measure, not only recognized so as a legislative matter, but by a commission on the impartiality of the judiciary that was convened by the Supreme Court's Chief Justice and chaired by Associate Justice Ming Chin. So the court system itself feels this is an important set of rules to impose on itself. And if I might, Madam Speaker, I'll use that as my close and urge an aye vote.
Thank you very much. Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 65, no 0. The measure passes. File item 98, AB 1983. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1983 by Assembly Member Tirico, an act relating to taxation.
Majority Leader Emeritus Tirico, you are recognized.
AB 1983 would add the Safe Surrender Baby Fund to the state income tax return forms voluntary contribution section. Respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 62, no 0. Measure passes. File item 99, pass and retain. File item 100, AB 2765. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2765 by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to civil actions.
Mr. Fuhr.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So this is a similarly uncontroversial measure, also received unanimous support in the Judiciary Committee. It's a bill that simply reaffirms a principle this legislature has affirmed time and again, and that is that a victim of art theft shouldn't be put in the position of having one hurdle after another placed before them when they try to recover that stolen art. It seeks to reconcile some competing decisions at the Court of Appeal level on 2 different issues in particular, one of which is, when are you charged with having discovered where you think the art might be? Is it actual discovery, or should you be assumed to constructively have discovered the art where the art is located? And the second issue about which Court of Appeal decisions have differed is, do our laws pertain to art that was stolen before 1983 or not? A recent appellate decision said there is a lack of clarity here. This statute seeks to rectify that problem and assure that victims of stolen art have an opportunity to vindicate their rights in the courts of our state. I urge an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 71, no 0. Measure passes. Members, we have about 7 more bills. We passed temporarily on a few others. There's 5 items on call, so for those members who are not down here, if you can come down to make sure that you are recorded as you'd like. File item 101, pass and retain. File item 102, AB 1937. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1937 by Assemblymember Fletcher and others, an act relating to pupil health.
Mr. Fletcher.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Over the last several years, and most recently with the H1N1 outbreak, public health officials have supported schools as alternative vaccination sites. Unfortunately, many California schools lack a school nurse on site, or they do not have enough nurses available to handle a district-wide vaccination should one become necessary. AB 1937 would provide the option for schools to utilize other health professionals to assist with certain types of school vaccination programs in the event there was a pandemic, an outbreak, or was otherwise needed in order to better ensure public safety and public health. I respectfully request an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 67, no 0. Measure passes. File item 103, AB 1980. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1980 by Assemblymember Hayashi, an act relating to healing arts.
Ms. Hayashi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Many animals arrive at shelters during off hours and in emergency conditions, and sometimes they require immediate attention, which may not be available by a veterinarian. AB 1980 allows properly trained shelter employees to provide first aid to sick and injured animals. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 65, no 0. The measure passes. Members, we'd like to direct your attention to the back. Mr. Speaker has a very special mystery guest here with us today.
Members, if you'd just pay attention for a second. I know I can't get you to take your seats. You know, a lot of you know I'm a lifelong Dodger fan, but I am a greater, hang on, but I am a bigger fan of greatness. And when you think of greatness in baseball, there is nobody who comes to mind more than Willie Mays. Now, today marks the 79th birthday of this amazing American legend. Willie Mays was named after his father, who was named after William Howard Taft. His mother was a champion sprinter in her high school years at a time when women were not given many opportunities to participate in sports. His parents wanted for their son what every parent wants for their children, the opportunity to succeed and live their own American dream. They encouraged Willie to stay in school, a decision that was critical for his future. He was a quarterback in his high school football team and a star basketball player, but it wasn't until after high school that he really developed what we know as that great talent in baseball, playing in a segregated semi-pro league in Birmingham. Already at that point, his phenomenal talent was on display, but not everyone noticed it. Both the Boston Braves and the New York Yankees passed on the opportunity to sign Willie Mays. Fortunately, he was eventually signed by the New York Giants, and in his 22-year career, he would hit 660 home runs, have almost 2,000 That's right. 660 home runs, natural. Natural. Almost 2,000 RBIs and more than 3,000 hits. He played in 24 All-Star games and was automatically inducted in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He was a defensive genius who still leads professional baseball in the most number of putouts by an outfielder. There are many great heroes in baseball, and everyone has a team or a player they think is best. But what's clear is that any discussion about the greatest players in the history of baseball has to include Willie Mays. Players like Willie Mays and Jackie Robinson are also symbols of the changing face of America as our nation fully embraces equality for all. When Willie Mays was born, he lived in a segregated society, and today we recognize him as a hero for millions of Americans across the decades. That is a testament to his legacy and the legacy of every other pioneer whose lives have affected so much great change. Today, it's my honor, my great honor, to join you in this chamber and our friends throughout California and really throughout our nation, everywhere where baseball is played, to say happy 79th birthday to a genuine American icon and a favorite son of California, the Say Hey Kid, the great Willie Mays. Got another 2 feet. And here you go. There you go. There's the mic. Day to you.
You stop. You got, this is the mic?
Yeah, you're fine right there.
Okay, got it. Well, it's like Richard Price says, I have no paper, no pen. I am here because I was asked to come because of my birthday. This is one of the better birthdays I had in a long, long time. I know with your great minds that you decided that you will let me come, and I'm so thrilled that you decided that you would make it Willie Mays Day. I don't know who thought of it. I really don't care, but I'm here. That's most important. I think when you play baseball and go through all the things that I went through at a young age, I said, I have to keep my mouth closed. My father made sure that he would give me a strap. The strap, anybody from the South know what a strap is? They put it on you and you know it was there. So all I can say to you, thank you, thank you, thank you very, very much.
Madam Speaker, I'd like
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, I'd like to ask unanimous consent for us to take a break in our floor proceedings. Ask the members to move to the front of the chamber and form for a group photo, and allow our special guest to join us in the front of chambers to take a photo with the entire membership.
Without objection.
So if you just hang on for a second, then.
Dr. Emerson? Dr. Emerson. Mr. Portantino. Mr. Portantino. It's nice to see Mr. Nilo is a fan. Happy 79th birthday to Willie Mays. Okay, members, we have 5 more bills on the daily file. We have 3 passed temporarily and 5 items on call. So if we could get seated and settled, we will continue with the daily file. File item 104, AB 2128. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2128 by Assemblymember Gaines, an act relating to private security services.
Mr. Gaines.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I have an opportunity to present AB 2128, which will professionalize the private security industry by requiring that all private security providers carry liability and bodily injury coverage of at least $1 million. It passed the Assembly Business and Professions Committee with unanimous support. There's no opposition to the bill, and I ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 61, no 0. Measure passes. File items 105 and 106 pass and retain. File item 107, AB 1679. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1679 by Assemblymember Torres, an act relating to public safety.
Ms. Torres.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's hard to follow Mr. May's presence here on the floor. However, nationwide, there are an estimated 500,000 people involved in emergency communications response. Nearly 50,000 of those are California 911 dispatchers. These are high-stress, high-responsibility positions that require real courage, grace under pressure. Last year and this year, This body designated the second full week of April as California Telecommunicators Week by resolution. Assembly Bill 1679 makes this a permanent designation for the second full week of April of each year as California Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 63, no 0. The measure passes. File item 108, AB 1923. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1923 by Assemblymember Evans, an act relating to energy.
Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, this bill deals with the growing problem of theft of solar panels. In many areas, including in my district, solar panels are found in rural areas, not necessarily on the top of buildings, but as in wineries, they're sitting out in the field usually. And unfortunately, the theft of solar panels is on the rise. In Napa County alone, there have been more than 400 panels stolen at a cost of more than $400,000 in just a year. Businesses like wineries in Napa County should be commended for investing in solar energy, not penalized and not victimized. So what this bill does is it authorizes existing funds from the California Solar Initiative to support the research and development of anti-theft technology for solar panels. And by doing so, the state will not only protect its commitment and in its investment, but also the investment of individual businesses who have followed the state's lead in the development of solar power. The bill is supported by law enforcement, the solar community, PG&E, and the wine industry. There is no opposition, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 43, noes 19. The measure passes. File item 109, AB 2498. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2498 by Assemblymember Skinner, an act relating to energy.
Ms. Skinner.
Madam Speaker and members, AB 2498 simply revises the combined heat and power definition enacted by AB 613 by Assemblymember Blakesley, making the CHP eligibility conditions accurate and consistent as they relate to greenhouse gas emissions performance. The original bill by Assemblymember Blakesley, the Waste Heat and Carbon Emissions Reduction Act, permitted the PUC to require investor-owned utilities to purchase excess combined heat and power generated electricity and required publicly owned utilities to provide a market for excess CHP generated electricity. The greenhouse gas emissions provisions that are prescribed in AB 613, the original bill, are now outdated, and the definitions must be updated in current law to align with recommendations made by the Air Resources Board and the recently enacted SB 104 by Senator Oropeza. The bill has bipartisan support and no opposition, and I respectfully request your aye vote. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 50, noes 3. Measure passes. File item 110, pass and retain. File item 111, AB 2626. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2626 by Assemblymember Jones, an act relating to public officers.
Mr. Jones.
Madam Speaker, members, AB 2626 is a district bill that allows the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department's security officers to contract with businesses that are engaged in services for our national defense or that otherwise are elements of our critical infrastructure. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 66, no 0. Measure passes. All items on the Senate third reading will be passed and retained. We're going to go back to 2 items that were passed temporarily. File item 73. AB 1914, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1914 by Assemblymember Davis, an act relating to public social services.
Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Today I'm presenting 1914, which will clarify the determination of anticipated income for food stamp eligibility. This idea came from a constituent who had some adverse experience while applying for food stamps. The bill will provide unemployment insurance benefits can only be counted as income for purposes of food stamp program eligibility, determination and calculation of the benefit level only if the County Welfare Department obtains a report from the Employment Development Department specifying a start date and the amount of the unemployment benefits. This bill will further require a copy of the report be provided to the food stamp program applicant and recipient if the County Welfare Department takes any action based upon the report. I thank the Chair, I thank you, Speaker, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 25. Measure passes. We're going to go to item number 56, AB 2474. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2474 by Assemblymember Bell, an act relating to community care facilities.
Mr. Bell.
Mr. Speaker and members, foster family agencies are not-for-profit agencies that train and recruit and certify foster parents. They were established as an alternative to group home placement for foster youth. Foster family agency provider rates were cut 10% as part of the state budget passed last year in October. Taken together, the years of frozen rates, along with the most recent 10% cut, have significantly reduced the capacity of foster family agency rates to cover the cost of care and social work for foster children. To offset the impacts of the rate cut, last year the ratio of social work supervisors to social workers was changed to 1 in 6 to 1 in 8 ratio until January of 2011. My bill is a modest proposal to extend this provision for 1 more year to sunset January 2012. This will extend the flexibility allowed in the existing law for another year because the rate cut will continue with little or no impact on the direct services they provide foster children. It's sponsored by California Alliance of Children and Family Services, supported by the California Welfare Directors Association and a variety of foster family agencies, and has no opposition. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 71, no 0. The measure passes. Okay, members, we have 5 items on call, and we are going to call the items in order. File item 41, AB 1759. Clerk to post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 43, noes 25. Measure passes. File item 46, AB 2187. Clerk to post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 27. File item 51, AB 2729. Clerk to post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 49, noes 20. Measure passes. File item 85, AB 2358. Clerk to post. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 29. Measure passes. Final item, file item 95, AB 2078. Clerk to post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 44, noes 27. Measure passes. Consent calendar. We are at the second day consent calendar. Does any member wish to remove an item from the second day consent calendar? Seeing and hearing none, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1867 by Assemblymember Harkey, an act relating to land use.
Clerk will open the roll on the consent calendar. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote? On the consent calendar, ayes 71, no 0. Clerk will note we will delay the announcement of the remaining consent calendar items till after the last member announces their vote changes. We are going to go to in memoriams. There are 2 in memoriams on the file today. Mr. Portantino for Dr. Charles Broberg. Mr. Portantino. Mr. Portantino.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise today to respectfully adjourn in memory of Dr. Charles Broberg. I rarely stand and speak in memory, but this man, Dr. Broberg, was so humble and so likable, and a man whose life and impact on others warrants this moment of respect. In 1959, Charles Broberg joined 30 other students from colleges throughout the United States in the U.S. State Department's first student exchange program with the USSR. He was at Skolnicky Park for the Nixon-Khrushchev kitchen cabinet debates. He was even photographed with Khrushchev after one of the debates. In 1970, following 2 years at Griffiths Air Force Base in Rome, New York, Charles and his wife Jean moved to La Cañada Flint Ridge. Jean continues to this day to be a stalwart member of the La Cañada Unified School Board. By the time Charles and Jean landed in La Cañada, he was an accomplished OBGYN at Huntington Hospital. Before retiring, Charles helped families welcome over 7,000 babies. Charles was a devoted husband and father of, I believe, 8 children and grandfather to 38. He was a soccer and baseball coach, scoutmaster, and mentor to countless children. He was a devout man who was very active in his church, and in 2001 went back to Eastern Europe as a physician in the Ukraine and Russia for 3.5 years. Upon returning to La Cañada, he resumed a part-time medical practice while being active in his Kiwanis Club, the same Kiwanis Club I'm in, his local community center board, and local ecumenical ministerial association. At his memorial service, someone remarked that before a man could become a great man, that he must first be a good man. Charles Broberg was a good man. While battling cancer, he still found time to tutor his grandchildren and continuing to volunteer. He loved baseball and said he wanted to be in the game for as many innings in which God allowed him to play. Our community joins with his family and friends in missing this great man, and I respectfully ask this body to adjourn in his memory.
Thank you. Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I rise to adjourn in memory of a woman named Brown, Dorothy Brown. All of us are fully and completely aware of the very important case of Brown versus the Board of Education, in which the Supreme Court held that segregated schools could not be equal if they separated students by race. Dorothy Brown was the Brown in Brown versus Board of Education. As a young girl in Topeka, Kansas, she had to walk miles and miles to get to school with her cousin because the elementary schools in that community were segregated. And it was her lengthy walk to school that inspired her uncle, Attorney Charles Bledsoe, to file the paperwork for what would become the landmark case of Brown versus the Board of Education. In 1972, she spearheaded the quest for a local chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha, the first African-American women's sorority. She was also, in 1945, the first African-American soloist for a Topeka High School commencement. She taught in the Vallejo City Unified Schools for more than 3 decades. Vallejo was blessed to have this woman in our schools. She was well known as a committed educator who firmly believed that no student was unteachable, and she taught all of her students, anything you do, you can do it better with an education. I respectfully request that we adjourn in the memory of Dorothy Brown.
Thank you, members. Please bring the names forward to the desk. The remaining requests to adjourn in memory will be deemed read and printed in the journal. The session schedule is as follows. Friday, May 7th, no floor session, no check-in. Monday, May 10th, floor session starting at 11 a.m. I am ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Calderon moves and Mr. Emerson seconds that this House stands adjourned until Monday, May 10th at 11 a.m. The quorum call is lifted.